A single rail whistle split the dusk. The orphan train hissed into the nameless prairie town, thick dust swirling in dry gusts around its iron wheels. Children with solemn, hollowed eyes peered from window slots, their faces bone-pale from the long ride west, from too many empty miles and forgotten names. One girl of 13 stood stiffly at the steps as the train slowed, her shoulders narrow, dark hair lank against her cheeks. She clutched a faded cloth bundle, a brittle, frayed letter tucked carefully inside. Her name, written in a careful hand by someone now buried or vanished, was Eliza Jane Cross. The platform lay silent but for the rustle of dry grass and the muttering of townsfolk gathered in stiff lines. Men with cracked boots and women in dust-streaked bonnets appraised the children like livestock, eyes moving from face to face, judging teeth, posture, age, and the threadbare quality of each child's hand-me-down clothes. A name was called. A boy Eliza had clung to on the train, his shoulder pressed against hers for warmth in the cold nights. He was summoned by a coarse shout, and a stranger's hand claimed him, a brief nod sealing the exchange. The boy was pulled away, his pale face turning once in her direction before a curtain of dust swallowed him. Eliza's grip tightened around her bundle. A tall woman, sour-faced and stiff, raised a bony hand. "I'll take that one," she said, her voice clipped, brittle as a dry branch snapping underfoot. She didn't ask for a name. A paper ticket was exchanged like currency for a calf at auction. The scratchy, pale blue dress Eliza wore hung awkwardly on her frame, the fabric stiff and smelling of soap too harsh for skin. The woman's hand latched around her upper arm, and Eliza was led down the step, her feet finding the packed dirt of this nowhere place. A single glance back. The boy stood at the train window, one palm pressed against the smudged glass. His eyes met hers through the dusty pane, a final, desperate tether between them before the train's whistle screamed once more. Eliza's heart knocked hard against her ribs. But no one stopped. The woman's grip tightened, the flesh pinching beneath her fingers. "I'll make a decent girl out of you," she muttered, turning away from the platform, her other hand lifting her skirts clear of the dust. The wagon ride was long and bone-jarring, the sun dropping low against the hills, the sky painted in bands of rust and violet. A hawk wheeled overhead, its cry sharp in the open air. Eliza sat beside a bag of feed, her bundle hugged to her chest. The wheels rattled and groaned, and the town shrank behind them, swallowed by grass and dusk and the loneliness of a country too wide to carry names. The house sat lean and weathered, its wood grayed by sun and wind, surrounded by brittle grass that cracked beneath each step. The land stretched endless in all directions, a horizon of dust and pale sky, no other homes in sight. Eliza stepped down from a wagon, dust rising around her shoes. The pale blue dress, stiff and new that morning, hung awkwardly against the bone of her shoulder. The woman gave her a sharp shove toward the house. A man stood on the porch, leaning against a post. His face was unshaven, thin, his eyes small and pale in the sinking light. He did not speak, did not nod. His eyes raked over the blue dress, over the hollow in her throat, over her narrow wrists clutching the bundle of things she owned. The woman's hand clamped around her elbow. "You'll earn your keep," she said, and pulled her inside. The air in the house was thick and sour, the sharp sting of lye soap fighting the metallic scent of old blood. A long, splintered table crouched at the center of the room, its wood scarred by deep cuts and burn marks. A single oil lamp hung from a hook in the beam overhead, its light flickering against the walls like a trapped thing. The floor groaned under the woman's steps. Without a word, she opened a narrow door and pointed inside. The room was barely larger than a closet. A sagging cot stood against one wall, a scrap of cloth draped over its frame in place of a curtain. The window was cracked, its broken panes stuffed with ragged cloth. "Your room," the woman said. She left the bundle on the cot, then walked away. Eliza did not cry. She set the bundle aside and waited until the house fell quiet again. The first chore came fast. The woman pointed to the kitchen stove, a massive, iron-bellied thing with rusted black teeth, and a lid that lifted with a hiss. "Fire it up." The stove was already hot. Eliza reached for a coal scuttle, but her hand brushed the metal, and the skin seared. She bit the inside of her cheek, so hard her eyes blurred, but she did not cry out. The woman didn't glance up. She fed the stove kindling, watching the flames jump and settle. The front door creaked open in the mid-afternoon heat. A boy of about 17 entered, his face slack, his eyes pale and mean. He carried the smell of horse sweat and tobacco. His gaze slid over the room and settled on Eliza. His stare lingered too long. The woman glanced up from her mending. "This one's your help now, Jeb," she muttered. The boy didn't answer. He smirked and leaned against the doorframe, picking dirt from his nails with a pocket knife. The sun sagged lower. A knock came at the side door. A woman stepped in, broad-shouldered, hairpin tight, her eyes kind but exhausted. She carried a basket. "I brought eggs," she said. Her gaze flickered toward Eliza, then back to the older woman. "Leave him," the sour-faced woman snapped. As the neighbor set the basket down, her hand dipped inside her apron and came out holding a small, perfect pear, yellow-green and smooth. She held it low, out of sight, and pressed it into Eliza's palm. "For you, little one," she whispered. Eliza's fingers closed around the fruit. It was warm from the woman's pocket. She tucked it under her pillow in the narrow room and did not eat it. At supper, the house held the heavy silence of places where words have gone dry. The man gnawed meat, the grease shining on his beard. The woman scolded about chores yet to be done, about mistakes not yet made. The boy sat with one elbow on the table, his eyes crawling over Eliza like she was some newly snared thing. A gust of dry wind slammed a loose door against the wall. The oil lamp shivered. In that moment of noise, the boy's hand reached out, fingers pinching the fabric of her dress. The blue tore with a faint sound. The boy smirked. No one intervened. No one spoke. Eliza kept her eyes on her plate and moved nothing but her hands. Later, the evening cool settled over the land, and the dark pressed against the windows. The woman sent Eliza to the barn to fetch water. The path was lined with brittle grass, the stars beginning to edge into the sky. The pump sat near the fence, rust streaking its handle. As she filled the tin pail, a figure moved from the shadows near the road. A man older, with sun-leathered skin and a kind of weariness in his bones. The neighbor's husband. He set down a bundle of sticks. "You be careful, girl," he said softly. His eyes held hers for a long moment before he turned and vanished into the dark, leaving her alone in the grass, the night too wide and the house behind her too near. Night fell quick and cold, the prairie air turning sharp as a blade. A storm gathered in the western hills, low clouds hunched against the sky, the distant flicker of lightning threading through them like veins. The land grew quiet, waiting. Inside the house, the single oil lamp burned with a sickly glow, its glass chimney streaked with soot. Eliza scrubbed at a blackened pan by lamplight, her hands raw, the ache in her shoulders a steady, dull weight. The woman sat hunched at the table, drinking from a chipped green bottle, her lips stained dark. The man snored in his chair, his head tilted back, mouth open, the sound of it thick and wet. In the corner, half in shadow, the boy waited. Jeb's eyes gleamed in the lamplight, his shoulders slack, a cruel patience hanging around him like smoke. He watched Eliza move through the room, the frayed hem of her blue dress dragging the floor, the torn sleeve showing the pale skin beneath. The dress that had been new that morning was already ruined, its edges soot-stained, the bodice splattered from stove grease and dishwater. A tear at the sleeve from where his fingers had grabbed it at supper hung open like a wound. The wind picked up outside, rattling the window panes, and the lamp's flame dipped. The woman let out a dry laugh at some thought she kept to herself, then drank deep. The snore from the man in the chair rattled the quiet. Eliza finished scrubbing the pan, stacked it on the counter, and turned to leave the kitchen for the pantry. The small room was narrow and low, shelves sagging under jars of pickled beets and canned peaches from seasons long gone. She had no warning. A hand clamped around her wrist, pulling her into the deeper shadows. The door thudded shut behind her. "You think you're something," Jeb whispered, his breath sour, his fingers digging into the skin of her arm. "In that city dress. Like you're better than us." Eliza twisted, pulling hard, but he held tight. A jar toppled from a shelf, and shattered at their feet. The old kerosene lamp on the pantry shelf tipped, the glass globe cracking against the wood, its flame spilling free in a sudden, fierce breath of light. Kerosene splashed across the floorboards. The flame leapt after it. A sharp humph, a burst of heat. Eliza's eyes caught the rising fire, the liquid light dancing along the spilled oil. She yanked herself loose, bolting for the door. The flame caught the hem of her dress, the fabric curling black as it lifted. Heat licked at her legs, smoke blinding her. She tore at the cloth, pulling it over her head, the searing heat burning her palms and wrists. She stumbled into the night half-naked, skin scraped and bleeding, her bare feet slapping against the dirt. Behind her a curse. Jeb's voice raw. The woman shrieked, the man bellowed, chairs overturning, a crash of glass. The fire spread fast. Flames climbed the walls, curling against the ceiling beams. Light burst from the windows like angry eyes. Eliza ran, the cold night air slashing her scorched skin, breath burning in her throat. She staggered toward the edge of the yard where the brittle grass met open fields. The house a furious blaze behind her. The blue dress, what was left of it, burned in the yard, a ghostly thing twisting in the flames, the color gone to ash and orange. The wind caught it, sent sparks into the dry dark. Lights flicked on in distant homes. Shadows moved. A man's voice shouted. Another answered. Neighbors came running, some with pails, others with blankets. The sound of feet pounding earth. A figure broke through the dark, the neighbor woman, hair unpinned, a shawl clutched in her hand. She found Eliza crouched in the scrub, shaking, streaked with blood and soot, her chest rising and falling in ragged sobs. The woman knelt beside her, draping the shawl around her thin shoulders. "Come now," she murmured, her voice thick with something like grief. "No one touch you again." The house smoldered, its bones cracking in the fire's final breath. Flames licked at the roof, embers drifting upward into the night, like restless spirits. The walls sagged inward, blackened beams collapsing one after another, with low groans. In the yard, voices rose and clashed, sharp with anger and accusation. The boy was held by the townsman, his arms pinned, his face streaked with soot and sweat. The woman screamed, her hair wild, her words a tangle of lies and spit. The man stood off to the side, silent, his eyes dulled to nothing. Eliza sat in the neighbor's wagon, an old quilt wrapped around her shoulders. The night air cut through her raw skin, every inch of her aching. The neighbor woman pressed a damp cloth to her brow, combing gently through what was left of her hair, scorched ends falling like ash. A wash basin clinked against the porch rail, the water pinked with soot and blood. In Eliza's hand, the pear remained, the skin bruised, the warmth of her palm dimming its life. She hadn't let it go. Sometime before dawn, the sheriff arrived, a heavy man with a thick mustache and a hat he didn't remove. He stepped down from his horse and took in the scene with a tired gaze. He spat in the dust, wiped his brow, and motioned toward Eliza. "She'll have to go back," he said, voice low. "Send her east again. Can't keep a stray out here." The neighbor woman stood, blocking his path. "She's got no east," she said. "She stays." They held each other's eyes for a long moment. Then the sheriff tipped his hat, muttered something about paperwork, and left. Dawn came pale and exhausted, the sky the color of old wool. Smoke drifted in thin veils across the prairie, rising like ghosts from the blackened remains of the house. The land stretched endless and empty. The orphan train was long gone, its trail invisible, swallowed by the wide miles and shifting wind. Eliza stood barefoot in the yard, the quilt still clutched around her shoulders. Her hair hung uneven, her face hollowed and bruised by light and shadow. She walked slowly to the cottonwood tree behind the neighbor's shack. The grass there was thin, the earth dry and stubborn. She knelt, dug a shallow hollow with her scraped hands, and laid the pear inside, the skin gone soft in her grasp. A grave for what was promised. A crow watched from a fence post, its head tilted, a single glossy eye fixed on her. A silent witness to the burial, to the girl who should have been someone else, somewhere else, in a dress that was never meant to burn. The wind moved through the grass, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke and dust. Years passed in a single breath. The neighbor woman aged, her hair turned white, her hands gnarled by time and hard living. Eliza grew into a woman, the pale blue of that long-ago dress only a ghost in memory, the scar on her wrist a thin, white thread. The old woman died one autumn night, her heart giving out with the harvest moon high in the sky. The shack stood empty. The roof caved, the porch slumped. The prairie took it back, blade by blade, season by season. Men came, offering papers, promises, things written in ink on fine parchment. They spoke of property and marriage, of places to send a girl alone in the world. Eliza listened, her face unreadable, then walked past them. The wind tugged at her hair, loose strands lifting like smoke. She never once looked back. Decades later, a traveler stopped at the edge of the land, a man from far away, drawn by old stories and brittle rumors. He asked about the house, about the night of fire and a girl in a blue dress. An old man by the store porch shook his head. "Bad place," he said. "Little girl burned it down, they say. No one speaks of it now." The traveler left a blue ribbon on the weathered fence post, where the cottonwood still stood, its branches gnarled but alive. The wind stirred it once, and by dusk it was gone.